My name's David Rodwin, and this is The Life. A friend of mine at Sundance said to me that if there's one thing they've learned this year from all the films at Sundance was that if you're a married man, make sure your wife has a job, because if she's just staying at home, she's going to be very unhappy and get into all kinds of trouble. Nothing exemplifies this more than Jill Soloway's Afternoon Delight, and I think her film also does it the best. She paints the portrait of a deeply dissatisfied stay-at-home mom with a small child and someone who used to have a job but suddenly finds themselves trying to figure out what to do with themselves. Her sex life with her husband is non-existent, and even her relationship with her lesbian shrink is terrible. So what does she do? Of course, she finds a stripper and tries to save her. Now, there's a lot of comedy that comes out of this, but what's interesting in listening to Jill talk about it was that they actually intended this to be a bit more of a straight-up comedy, and in making the film, they actually discovered some really deep, touching human moments. So now it's a comedy with a lot more heart than they even originally thought it was going to have. And one of my favorite things about the film is that it so captures Jill's voice. She was a writer and producer on 6 Feet Under, she was the showrunner on United States of Tara, and at times you could hear smatterings of her voice. But if you know her short stories, the things she's done at Sit and Spin, or her book Tiny Ladies in Shiny Pants, you know there is an irreverent, sexy Jill who is trying to come out in these TV shows, but she's still within someone else's structure. Now, writing her own script and directing her own script, she has total say. And not only that, she found an extraordinary actress, Kathryn Hahn, who has done a simply stunning job of capturing Jill. Having met Jill just a few times, it was amazing to watch Kathryn take on not just her speech pattern, but some of her physicality. It was really incredible. Josh Radnor also did a good job as the long-suffering husband, suddenly having to contend with a stripper who's now in the room down the hall. But aside from one big final dramatic scene with his wife at the end of the film, he's not given a lot to work with. So he works in very nuanced shades of gray. And I'm not talking about that spicy book. I'm talking about the opposite. I'm talking about trying to find the life in someone who is feeling lifeless, who is dissatisfied at work, who is deeply frustrated with his wife. It's, I think, a real role, but it's also one hard to make lively and engaging on screen. Juno is a wonderful revelation as an actress who simply is magnetic on screen and a delight to watch, to the point where you're so rooting for her when she actually begins to make a turn in the third act. You are on the edge of your seat to see if she's actually going to fall. Jane Lynch has some fun cameo scenes, but it's really Juno Temple who lights up the screen in bits and places that you never actually expect. She provides a new kind of depth to the hooker with a heart of gold that is really quite refreshing. But in the end, it's really Jill's diabolical humor, wildly inappropriate, especially sexually, saying things that only women can say, and that women, because they are so rarely writers and directors of their own film, rarely have the opportunity to say. And that all comes to a head in this wonderful drunken party scene that is so inappropriate that you should see the movie just for this scene alone. Jill works so well with these actors that much of it was improvised and much of it feels so real and dangerous that you really don't want to be at that party, because it's one of those parties that falls apart. But that makes it a wonderful scene, and it makes it a film worth going to. So I hope you get to see Afternoon Delight. It should be in theaters in the next 6 to 12 months. I highly recommend it. My name's David Rodwin, and this is The Life.
I think if I had started off saying, I'm looking to raise $10 million and make my movie, it never would have happened. I went down to the farmer's market that morning knowing I was going to make it no matter what. Possibly on my iPhone, on my VHS camera. I just was sure I was going to make it. So I didn't wait for the right amount of money. I knew that we just had to get the ball rolling, and I think that's a really important thing, especially for women filmmakers. You know, it's not that I think the world doesn't want to support women, it's just, you know, this is what I tell people when they say, why aren't there more women directors? People aren't used to sitting in the seat of a female protagonist, because over the past however many hundreds of years, people are used to a male protagonist. So when people are talking about the 4 quadrants of an audience, women will go see a movie with a male in the lead and they're comfortable sitting in his shoes. Men aren't necessarily comfortable sitting in a female protagonist's body for 2 hours. And so there's just half as many people interested, I think, automatically. Those, you know, the big huge Spider-Man movies and the big superhero movies, those get funded because everybody wants to see them. The truth is, I think everybody wants to see these kinds of movies as well, men, women. I think people are really love being on this journey with this woman. Even just that simple thing of like, okay, I'm going to tell a story from a woman's point of view, where we're with her. I was really inspired by Andrea Arnold and Fish Tank. I really sort of, I think, changed as a filmmaker when I saw Fish Tank because of the way she put the camera in the body of the protagonist. She had this way of shooting where you could feel how it felt to be the protagonist. And so I was talking a lot as we were raising the money about this sort of feminine idea of a heroine's journey and something that kind of isn't a traditional storytelling thing, which is things are happening to somebody.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of spirit that I brought to the set. Let's just see what happens. Same thing with the funding, same thing with producers. I just kind of tried to be really open and allow people to come aboard and allow people to have input and be part of it, and it really took on a life of its own.